Testing 1, 2, 3. Mr. Mayor, it is now 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Before I call the meeting to order, I want everybody to understand that we have 3 meetings today, and we want to go through our meetings as expeditiously.
Testing.
Are you? Huh? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Clerk, can you hear me? He can't hear me.
Hold on. Yes, he's on like your.
Mr. Clerk, can you hear me?
Can't hear.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, can you hear me, Corey?
So I can't hear the mayor.
Can you hear me? We can hear you.
Can everyone else hear me?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yes, I can hear everybody fine.
I can hear everyone too, Mariel.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you. I hear you fine.
Somebody has 2 things.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Clerk? He can't hear me.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I can hear you on mine.
Can anyone else hear me?
We all can hear you, but you can't hear me.
We can hear you.
Let me begin. I don't know how we're going to work this because the clerk can't hear me. But once again, we have an aggressive schedule.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Corey, can you hear me?
Okay. Wonder why I can't hear.
Perhaps if people can use their chat box, if your chat box is open.
The clerk is responsible for recording the minutes. So how's the chat box
There we go.
help in this manner?
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We're ready to go.
Corey, are you ready?
Yes, sir. We're ready to go.
Okay. What I was stating was that we have a very aggressive agenda today with 3 meetings. I would like you all to be cognizant of that in your responses and your time, because we have people in the community who stand around to hear these meetings. And that those presentations, Mr. Clerk, that they stay within the time limits of the presentation, okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Clerk, I want to do one thing before I call the meeting together. I want you to eliminate the black drop on Mr. Khalid. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir.
There you go. No, it's still there. I want to eliminate Khalid Cares, USA.
Oh, that's his name.
Hyman? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Hyman,
Yes, sir.
I've asked that all right, he just took it off. All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. Council work session meeting agenda. I call it to order. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, good afternoon. This is the roll call for the work session. The Honorable William Bill Edwards, Mayor.
Here.
The Honorable Catherine F. Rao, District 1.
Present.
The Honorable Carmelita Gumbs, District 2.
Present.
The Honorable Helen D. Willis, District 3.
Present.
The Honorable Naima Gilliard, District 4.
She's gonna be late to the meeting.
Yes, sir. The Honorable Corey A. Reeves, District 5.
Counted for.
The Honorable Councilmember Khalid, District 6.
Present.
And the Honorable Mark Baker, District 7.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, first item, please.
First item is a presentation. The Overground Railroad. This will be presented by Mr. Harold Alexander. This item is placed on the agenda by Mayor Edwards and Councilmember Gumbs. Mr. Alexander, you have the floor. Mr. Alexander?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Right, thank you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation to the city of South Fulton. This is one of many presentations that will be made throughout Metro Atlanta, as well as to the state of Georgia. This presentation regards making March Black Business Month on a legislative level. I want to thank the city. In the previous years, we've received resolutions declaring March to be Black Business Month, and we greatly appreciate that. It's now time that we move to the next level, and I'd like to from this presentation, we look to introduce what Black Business Month involves. I'm trying to scroll down. Can we? Okay. We're going to explain why and how the city of South Fulton will benefit from Black Business Month. And if you notice, it's also called March into March, meaning that it's not just to support and celebrate Black businesses just during the month of March, but come April 1, we'll be marching to the next Black Business Month. We can go to the next screen. Also, there's an extremely exciting program called the Overground Railroad Activity Societies program that I want to introduce to you. We had planned to have present Nancy Johnson of the Urban League, and you'll hear more of what that would have been what that will be about. We were also going to have in this presentation C.J. Jones of the United States Tennis Association, Aaron Spalding of the Georgia Concourse de Elegance, and also the Ride to the Olympics. Some of you may know Miguel Wilson, who is responsible for Morehouse having its polo team, and he's doing that throughout HBCUs. He is connecting with the Overground Railroad in connection with the Overground Railroad Activities Program. And so if we could just go to the next slide. Okay. We're going to get, and let's just go to the next slide. And at this point, if you could just hit the play button. This is a 2-minute. Just wanted to give Dr. King just a quick 2 minutes. This really is the whole foundation of the reason why it's time for us to make March Black Business Month, such that when we come out of February Black History Month, looking to our past, we have a formal, intentional focus on where we are, what we've accomplished the last 12 months, and what we're going to accomplish the next 12 months, and dealing with every aspect of life. If you could just hit play, Corey, if you will.
Mr. Alexander, we embedded we made it a PDF, so we can play it on the back end if you don't mind.
Okay, well,
Remember your time.
yes, so let's go to the next. So the mission of the Overground Railroad is to fulfill Dr. King's last directions to us. Most people who've heard about his last message here about we've been to the mountaintop, but actually, once you hear that 2-minute excerpt, you'll see he really was telling us that in order to really accomplish the freedom that he was really seeking for us, we would have to really establish our own economic base. Let's go to the next. So to accomplish this mission, we have to support Black-owned businesses. And of course, that's a primary focus of Black Business Month. Going to the next slide. Now, the strategy that we've used, the Overground Railroad now is 20 years. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. We now have 106 churches, 140 business, 40 community organizations. And our primary strategy is to connect consumers with Black-owned businesses, primarily through churches. Go on. Thank you. But not only through churches, but also community organizations. I mentioned that we have 40 community organizations, the ABL, 100 Black Men, just about every well-known Black organization is connected with the Overground Railroad. So indeed, the Overground Railroad movement is really to connect the entire Black community. Going to the and I've told you the number, so we can go on to the next one. And at this point now, we are connecting with the governments. And as you will see, South Fulton has a number of programs, and through the activity number of programs that where the Overground Railroad can help in terms of connecting it into the community and amplifying all the good things that are actually going on in South Fulton. And we'll be talking about that when we get to the activity societies. If you'll go on to the next one. Thank you. Okay. And this section right here really talks about the Overground Railroad Business Directory. For the purpose of this meeting, we're going to kind of go past that, but if you can go to the next one and go to the next one and the next one. See, we're skipping all this, okay? And the next one and the next one and the next one. And the next one. Oh, okay, right there. So of course, obviously, if we're going to support Black-owned businesses, we do have to have a place to know who are the Black-owned businesses, where to find them. That's what the Overground Railroad Business Directory is about. And we expect with the programs that we're launching now that is going to become more well-known and become more the place for Black-owned businesses to be and to be found. But our primary intention for today is to talk about Black Business Month. You know, we all know how Black History Month played a major role in making us aware of who we really are. If we can go to the next one. Corey, yeah. Okay, you know, we learned that we were always men and women created in the very image of God, contrary to what was on the books in terms of us being 3/5 human. Let's go to the next one. This city is one of the fruits which were produced as a result of the impact of Black history that Black History Month had on our community and the world. Next one. However, we failed to take the next step which Dr. King laid for us. We failed to support our own businesses. Let's go to the next one. It's for this reason that the Black community lags behind every other community. Okay, we are behind and falling further behind, notwithstanding great gains in the political arena. Unless and until we change the economic landscape of the Black community by supporting Black-owned businesses, we will continue to be behind. Just as Black History Month gave a time to highlight and focus on our history, Black Business Month will give a time to focus on where we are today and where we must go economically. You know, and it's not, Black Business Month is not to be the only time that we focus on and celebrate Black-owned businesses. Next, go ahead. March will be the climax for the entire year, focusing on and celebrating the Black community. Go. Okay. Yes. So it's not, everything is business. I don't, you know, whether it's sports, whether it's gardening, everything is business. So really it's about celebrating the entire Black community. Let's go to the next one. April 1st begins our march to the next Black Business Month. So as soon as we complete Black Business Month in March, come April 1, we'll be marching to the next Black Business Month. So this will be a continuous, never-ending cycle, which gets us to focus, support, and celebrate the Black community and Black-owned businesses. Okay. Now, here, the Overground Railroad Activity Societies is a program that, and there is a 30-second video. When you get a chance, you know, please take a look at it. The go ahead to the next one. Through the Overground Railroad Activity Societies, the Black community will be organized into activity groups. So we are organizing the Black community based on what people's interests are, and then we're connecting them into local, state, regional, national, and international organizations. And then we're bringing all of those activity societies into the Overground Railroad churches, and that becomes part of their ministry, such that a person can, it can be a storefront or it can be a mega church. And through that, they can get involved with everything that's good that you can imagine. Let's go to the next screen. And I just told you about how it connects all the way through. So let's go to the next one. The Overground Railroad churches will become centers. Of course, I've told you about that. Okay, let's go on. Okay, now the United States Tenants Association, and matter of fact, CJ Jones was going to be here to represent that particular society. This will tie into your South Fulton Tennis Center. And through this, we're going to be organizing the entire Metro Atlanta and associating them with centers and tying those into where the church is, so that anybody through an Overground Railroad church or Overground Railroad community organization, or even the city government, can connect into to tennis. Let's go to the next one. The Urban League will be a founding participant in the Overground Railroad Building Construction Society. It's interesting that the $1,200,000 infrastructure legislation was passed, but the truth of the matter is, Blacks actually will not directly benefit as a business through, proportionately, because very few Blacks are actually involved in building and construction. Through the Overground Railroad Building Society, with the Urban League and others, you'll see that we intend to bring a change to that, and we look for the city of South Fulton to benefit from that. Let's go to the next one. The Gardening Society. I was very excited when I saw the young lady in the newsletter, who the youngest gardener, who by God's grace is wonderful. That's a South Fulton citizen Well, through the gardening society, we're looking to have every church to have a garden or be part of a community garden. Go through to the next one. Through the health society, there's going to be an unprecedented coordination of every aspect of health, you know, and through this, we're going to be putting into the church's calendars all the health periods. If it's cancer, if it's breast cancer, if it's colon, and there will be programs coordinated through this society. And we tie that into the local government. So the churches that would be in South Fulton, we would tie that into the South Fulton, College Park, et cetera, et cetera. Go to the next one, please. Presently, 11 Overground Railroad activity societies are being launched.
Mr.
Mr.
Alexander, you've exhausted time. I want to leave something for my colleagues to ask you if you want to ask you any questions. Is that okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it. No.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. Hearing none.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
All right. Thank you. I can leave now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Next item, presentation number 2, City of South Fulton Parks, Recreation and Cultural Affairs, Master Plan Draft, Long Range Vision. This will be presented by Carlos Perez with Perez Planning and Design, LLC.
Mr. Perez.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Perez, go right ahead.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, city staff. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Excited to be able to be here with you this afternoon and share where we are in the process, as well as this long-range vision that many of you have seen already. We've had the opportunity to meet with most of you, and we appreciate the time that you've taken to meet with us and share your comments. We've gone ahead and incorporated those onto this presentation. Look forward to sharing this with you and receiving a nod to allow us to move on to the next phase of the project, which is developing individual park master plans for each of the city's parks based on this long-range vision. So for today, I'd like to give you a brief overview of this presentation as you've seen already to allow us to stay within our time limits. We'll do a project overview, remind you of the needs assessment findings, and then go over the long-range vision and talk about next steps. So if we go to the next slide, this is a reminder of our planning process, which is this 5 phases that we've gone through already. Right now, we're in phase 3, which is the development of a long-range vision based on the context analysis, needs and priorities assessment. The next step in the long-range vision will be to develop individual park master plans, after which we'll develop cost estimates and implementation strategy based on realistic funding and some stretch funding as well. And then ultimately deliver a final plan for the city's review and adoption. We were thinking by spring of 2023, and you'll see that schedule towards the end of the presentation. As a reminder, we've had really great participation through this process pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, which we've been very, very pleased with the outcome. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the key summary findings, which you've seen already, but this is just a reminder. What we heard is residents wanted to continue to position parks as critical infrastructure in the city, just as it has been done over the pandemic, which has been extremely helpful. There's a desire to upgrade parks. You inherited a system that hadn't received capital improvements for a very long time, so deferred maintenance has essentially turned into capital improvements. We also want to continue to ensure equitable access throughout the city. We know there's certain areas in the cities that don't have access to the same types of parks and recreation facilities, so we want to address that in the future. We also want to continue to let residents know and enhance the way residents learn about parks and recreation services. And while we're doing that, also customize those offerings to residents based on the priorities that we've heard them tell us are important to them. And then lastly, maximize and leverage the resources that we have to maximize impact on the system. So based on these findings and the workshops with staff, we've developed a mission, vision, and some guiding principles for the system. So as a reminder, many of you have seen this already, but this is our mission, right? As part of this plan is to build community through high quality and equitable parks, trails, recreation, and cultural experiences. The vision, as you'll see in the next slide, is to create an interconnected system of parks, trails, recreation, and cultural experiences that strengthen the sustainability and resiliency of the city of South Fulton. And to help us implement this, we have a series of guiding principles. Essentially what we heard, and you'll see that on the next slide, we heard from residents that community safety was really important to them and economic development was really important to them. So we wanted to include that in the guiding principles, make sure we're reinforcing safe communities and identity, fostering economic development, and then maximizing awareness. And then the next slide has three more guiding principles: enhance equity and inclusivity, promote excellence in education, health and wellness, and improve financial, environmental, and social sustainability. We also developed a series of strategies, 3 main strategies for this vision: refresh, connect, and develop. And for refresh, connect, and develop, we are applying them to programs, places, and people. So in the next series of slides, I'm going to give an overview of some of these to keep us going. Refresh, we want to continue to ensure programs are relevant to the community, so establish a process that allows them to be consistent with what residents want to see. We also want to improve the existing system, right? We heard from residents it was really important to do that and bring it up to a level that improves the curb appeal for the parks. And then in terms of people, we want to develop what we're calling the South Fulton way. So, right, a customer service strategy that allows residents to experience high quality services in the community. If we go to the next slide, we go to the next strategy, which is about connecting, right? So the first thing we want to do is connect programs to people, make sure that residents are able to participate in those programs near their homes, whether it's at a center or a park or virtually or through mobile services. And then in terms of places, we want to develop an interconnected system of high quality on-street and off-street facilities, which is an image here you see on the map of that interconnected system throughout the city. And in the next couple of slides, you can see how we hope to leverage that investment, right? So wherever we make this investment of a trail, we want to include amenities and facilities along them to help activate them and make them important nodes for residents to enjoy. And in terms of connecting people, we want to look at this from the perspective of teamwork, right? Developing a strategy to implement this plan, consider diversity, equity, and inclusion in these service delivery strategies that we implement, and always consider best practices and key performance indicators, right, that allow us to track our service delivery. If we go to the next slide, we get into the last strategy, which is develop. And that starts with developing programs that we heard from residents are really important. And that's adult fitness and wellness, senior fitness and wellness, learn to swim, senior programs, special events, and esports, which is a major trend in the country right now. And in the next slide, we talk about developing places. And this talks about different parks throughout the city. So we're going to go through these a little quickly. But the first one is wherever we develop a municipal center, right? It would be a great opportunity to develop a town center park, similar to how many cities throughout the metro area have done. Sandy Springs being a recent one, even Smyrna, where city manager Tammi used to be at. So it's a great example and something that's that City of South Fulton has the opportunity to do in a public-private partnership type strategy, if appropriate. We also want to develop local parks, especially in areas that don't have access to parks. And this could be done through private or public investment, but the idea would be to develop a park within 1 mile of every resident. So every resident has access to a high-quality space. In the next slide, you'll see that in addition to those local parks, we also want to look at larger parks, right, and develop those also within an equitable distance from residents, about 2 miles. And so you'll see that there's areas throughout the city that don't have access to those. We want, as the city continues to grow, we want to provide those opportunities. And then the next slide looks at creating community centers where there isn't access to them. So not only is it creating new centers, but taking the ones that need some help and need to be remodeled and expanded, looking at opportunities to do that over time. So we have residents have access to high quality indoor spaces and programs that could be offered within them. And then the next slide talks about the different types of facilities that may be needed as the city continues to grow. And so we've identified the number based on the population projections, as well as the areas in the city that may need these facilities throughout the city. This is just a conglomeration of all those, but in the final report, you will see these broken down by facility. And we're almost done. The next one is about developing places, but from a natural areas perspective. And so the idea is we want to identify and protect those areas of high quality ecological biodiversity, right? And also provide connectivity and access to them. And then develop an interconnected system, right? That connects all of them together. An example is something that could be done along Wolf Creek. And that's the next image that you'll see. This is an existing condition, but it could be developed into something like the following slide that starts connecting all these places together. And then the last component of development places is integrating arts into the system, right? Whether it's paintings or murals or even furniture of different colors, play structures that have a playful strategy, glow in the dark trails, something that really celebrates and is unique to the city, considering the strong arts and cultural department and group that you have within the city. And then the last slide, or the second to last slide, is developing people, and that's really about creating a succession plan, right? And allowing that continuous learning and development of staff. As we have new staff come in and staff move on, we want to continue that institutional knowledge to continue over time and also continue the high quality services that residents would like to see. So this is, again, just a summary of the vision, the written vision, and that graphical image of what that park system vision could be. And then the next steps for us is to update this vision based on any input that we receive. We'd like to do that this month and wrap up this portion of the report. And we'll use December through February to develop those park site master plans for each of the city's parks, and then develop cost estimates, implementation strategies February, March. And then we look forward to presenting the final plan in March, April of 2022. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to present to you, and love to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Carlos. You did right on time.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? I'm looking at the queue. I don't see anything. I'm looking at hands being raised. I don't see any. Are there any questions? I just have one comment.
Yes, sir.
Carlos, you and I talked about this, and I think if I remember the figure right, that we need about 80-something parks. Was that the right figure? What did you come up with?
It was 14. Let's see, if we include the 14 neighborhood parks that we need, and I believe it's 5 community parks, about 20 new parks that we would need throughout the city, including the town center, the neighborhood parks, and the community parks.
And my emphasis to you was that we needed to make sure that we have something we don't have a lot of in the city, and that's pocket parks.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Dr. Rao was very enthusiastic about the art, and so am I. And so we need to incorporate those things in the pocket parks, I think.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Hold on. There's Councilmember Willis is on right now. Councilmember Willis.
Hi, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez, what is the next phase? Is it to talk about how we would finance these recommendations, and when will the plan be finalized?
Yeah, great question. So the next phase, you're absolutely right. That is one of the next phases, right? Based on this long range vision, we'll go ahead and update or create concepts for each of the parks. Doing that will help us get a better idea of what the costs are for the system and the parks from a long range perspective. And then we'll use that to then develop an implementation strategy. Part of our task is to meet with your finance department and see what realistic funding we have over the coming years, and then use that to create a phased implementation strategy. The completion of all these tasks should take us through about, let me see if was it April, May, or March, April? Let me see. That was on the second to last slide. March, April of 2022 as we hope to wrap this up.
Thank you, I yield.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Perez, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. We appreciate your having this for us today. All right.
Thank you for the time. Bye-bye.
Next item, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next item is presentation number 3, This is titled Text Amendments to the City of South Fulton Zoning Ordinance. This will be presented by Wood and Associates as well as the Community Development and Regulatory Affairs Department.
Okay, staff, go ahead.
Greetings, Mayor and Council. This presentation will be given to you by Lee Walton of Wood Association. He's going to give the presentation, so I'll pause here and allow for him to chime in.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Good afternoon, everyone, Mayor and Council. As requested, I will go through this quickly and then be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And we have basically bullet point list through proposed text amendments, subject by subject. And I guess I would preface by saying when we adopted the revised zoning ordinance about this time last year, we anticipated once we put it into effect that we would identify needs for tweaks, and we've been keeping track of those, and you've been providing input as it has been put in place and enacted and implemented over the first year.
Mr. Walton, would you do me a favor?
Yes, sir.
For the sake of those who are listening as constituency, tell them who you are and what your role is.
Thank you, sir. Gladly. Lee Walton, I'm a project manager and planner with Wood Environment Infrastructure Solutions. We're a Atlanta-based environmental consulting firm, and my specialty is city planning, land use planning, and zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes, sir. And we worked with your staff over a couple of years process to completely revise the zoning ordinance to take it from a Fulton County zoning ordinance to a City of South Fulton zoning ordinance, which was adopted about this time last year. So going through the proposed text amendments, some of these are smaller, some of them are slightly more involved. Starting off, gas stations would be allowed in M2 district on Fulton Industrial Boulevard. They'd be considered allowed, and they would be considered special use in M2 on locations other than fronting Fulton Industrial Boulevard. Secondly, the Cedar Grove Agricultural Overlay District would be revised to reinforce and reference the existing Cedar Grove Agricultural Subdivision Ordinance, which is on your books in the subdivision regulations in Code of Ordinances section 7.2. And that section will be revised, which is not in the zoning ordinance, but it's affiliated. So that section would be revised with wording to properly recognize City of South Fulton. It currently still references Fulton County, but it is subdivision regulations and design guidelines for the Cedar Grove Agricultural District that are currently in place and that are intended to be associated with that overlay. Thirdly, a Red Oak Community Overlay District would be created based on the policy of the comprehensive plan, which is still draft, but which is expected to be adopted, including guidance to develop an overlay district for the Red Oak area. This would be consistent with other existing overlay districts, particularly with the Cliftondale and Cascade overlay districts, but it would also have a focus on redevelopment, recognizing that redevelopment is an important part of the future of the Red Oak area. So next, there would be text amendment would result in expanded standards for special use review. The result would be standards for special use review that are more broad and flexible, that give staff, planning commission, and city council more leeway in special use decisions. And the basis for this is precedent established, long-standing precedent established by the city of Atlanta with their special use review standards. And specifically what would be added to the existing review standards in the city's zoning ordinance are consideration of availability of other lands suitable for the proposed use, the effect on the balance of land uses, the effect on character of the neighborhood, the suitability of the proposed uses, the effect on adjacent property, the economic use of current zoning, and other conditions. Those verbatim are provisions that have been tested and used in other communities, including the city of Atlanta, and they're proposed to be added to the city of South Fulton special use conditions. Then the last one on this page, and which, yes, thank you, extends to the next page, is modifications to the existing R5A residential zoning district to change it to a district that allows cottage and tiny homes. It would transform it into a district for cottage and tiny homes with a minimum house size of 400 square feet. The proposed approach keeps the same R5A lot size, so effectively the same density as R5A currently allows and provides for, but it reduces setbacks, reduces the minimum house size, and includes extensive additional new requirements for open space preservation and for neighborhood design that centers around open space. And there's an illustration in the proposed district that gives a sense of what's desired. For circumstances where tiny homes, a 400 square foot home would be used, the state definition for tiny home is 400 square feet or smaller, maybe to as small as 250 square feet. So a 400 square foot home in this circumstance would be defined as a tiny home. And for that purpose, it would be appropriate for the city to also adopt Appendix Q of the International Residential Code, which covers tiny homes and allows some additional provisions for egress, ingress, and safety features associated with tiny homes. And as you can see on this slide, what's proposed, part of what's proposed in the text amendment is modifying Table 4-1, which sets forth the lot size and dimensional standards, and changing not the lot size, but changing the setback requirements, and as I mentioned, changing the minimum heated floor area requirement to a 400 square foot requirement. And the reason the slide shows the way it does, initially we looked at this as a cottage home approach, which would have had a minimum 650 square foot house. And then the revised approach extends it to allow a 400 square foot tiny home approach. Next slide. Okay. In the AG1 district, the text amendment would add a minimum house size. Currently, there is no minimum house size specified for AG1. This would add the minimum house size that is currently existing in R1, would make it the same for AG1. The next point, recreational courts. In the code, there are several references, and specifically in section 30209 definitions to tennis courts. We recognize at this point that there are a wide variety of other types of courts. And so the staff's proposal and recommendation is to change the definition from specifically tennis courts to more broadly recreational courts, which would include volleyball, basketball, and similar. The next is to change the procedural requirement when a rezoning request is denied by the city council. Current requirement sets a 6-month waiting period before the same request could be reapplied. This proposes to extend that waiting period to 1 year. The next is simply an expansion of the Fulton Industrial District overlay geography as per the code to include the area that's been recently annexed by the city. I believe that's how the overlay district was initially established under Fulton County, including all that land. So this is effectively restoring that overlay district to more or less its original boundaries. And then also related to the Fulton Industrial Business District overlay, proposed expanded standards requiring more landscaping and providing more detail about landscape buffers that need to be included on Fulton Industrial and adjacent to industrial buildings. And that would be in keeping with the existing standards of the Cascade overlay district, which is somewhat increased over the Fulton Industrial, but not dramatically. And then final two are simple modifications to the permit process requirements for special events to make that internally consistent in the ordinance and to make the process of special event permits efficient. And then finally, a few definitions that need to be added per city staff. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Walton. Any questions? I see Mayor Pro Tem Willis in the queue.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Mayor. Two questions I have. Can you provide clarification around the R5 tiny homes? Specifically, where are those homes? What districts are those homes going to? The R5 designation is going to be.
Yes, ma'am. Probably a better description of where existing R5 zone property is, so she may chime in with that. But in principle, there is very little existing property in the city zone R5A. There are maybe 4 areas in the city where R5A zoning exists. So, and those areas are primarily developed. There may be one that is still under construction. So as we see it, there's very little land zoned where this would be an existing right. In a case where a developer would look to develop under these new standards, almost without exception, it would require rezoning from something else to R5A. And that rezoning process would require the developer to meet all of the standards of the new text amendment.
Mm-hmm. So I can't speak for anyone else's district because I was elected. Constituents are not in favor of tiny homes being in their area. So I just want to make sure that do we need to put some type of condition, or do we need to put some type of specification, or can you confirm whether or not R5 is in District 3?
Thank you, Councilwoman, or Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize. The 6 properties or 6 parcels that have the R5A districts or zoning classifications are in District 4, District 5, and District 7. So those are the 3 council districts that this R5A has current zonings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
My second question is there any reason why we're changing the criteria around the setbacks?
Yes, ma'am. When originally considered, what we're looking for is the ability for homes in a cottage type setting, and they can be as small as tiny homes as this is revised, to be able to locate in a cluster very close together so that even on a small lot, like a 4,000 square foot lot, you would still have yard space and space and opportunity for expansion of homes. What we see currently in R5A is essentially very small lots that are very heavily filled with houses. So there's very little yard left. So the notion here is that we would take what is not necessarily the most desirable of existing residential districts and make it more open space focused.
So is there any way, Director Reed and Woods, that we could make this specific to the districts that have R5? Because I don't want that criteria to impact the entire city based on us trying to make this criteria change to align with the tiny homes.
So yeah, I'll take that question.
Okay.
So the zoning classifications are very much similar to what you're seeing in every portion of the city. For example, when you see R1 or CUP, you're seeing in every district because it's not singleized to a specific district, it's citywide. So with that being said, it has an R5A zoning classification for those specific districts that I identified. But if an applicant comes before you and asks to rezone any of the parcels or properties within your specific districts, they have the right to request that, and then you can approve or deny, but they can put it anywhere in the city, should that classification be changed and allow for that use.
When you say put anywhere in the city, you mean, well, can you clarify, can they put what anywhere in the city?
Okay, so if the parcel is zoned R3 and
Okay.
it's in, choose your district, for example, it's zoned R3 and it's located in District 3. If the applicant comes before mayor and council and makes a request to in fact change it to R5A, they can make that request to council. And should council decide that they would like to change it to R5A, that of course will go by vote the same way any of your zoning actions take place, and it can then allow for it to be, as mentioned, more than the 6 parcels that I mentioned earlier. It could be more than that. It can be anywhere in the city once it's placed in a zoning classification allowance.
If I could add one clarification to that, per the proposed standards for a property to be, to apply for rezoning, for the owner of the property to apply for rezoning, the property would have to be a minimum of 2 acres and a maximum of 20 acres. So notionally, a new R5A tiny home development and or cottage home development could not be smaller than 2 acres total and could not be larger than 20 acres total. And that would generally roughly correspond to not smaller than, I believe, 20 homes, not larger than 200 homes. I'll have to check my math on that.
Okay, so just for clarification, and I'm gonna move on because I know my other colleagues have questions. Currently, District 3 does not have any R5 zoning designations.
Currently, they do not have R5A.
They do not have R5A. Okay, what zoning is the tiny homes allowed for? Is that R5A?
Currently, they're not allowed. The text amendment would allow for R5A. So just for clarity, there's an R5 and then there's the R5A. So this specification will go inside the R5A should council allow for that to take place.
Okay, and if they decide they want to put tiny homes in District 3, they will have to come before this council for a vote to allow R5A, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Dr. Rao.
Thank you for acknowledging me. A couple things I wanted to clarify. The first was the intent around the gas stations on Fulton Industrial. What I was seeking was to require a special use permit consistent with how it is across the city. I think right now, as we were before dealing with annexation, that was a issue, but I think all of them should have a special use for permit for gas stations.
I agree.
And the second one was, I will say that under the R5A, same thing, my constituents have expressed the same concerns around tiny homes. I would, but as we set policy for this entire city, there is the possibility somebody could, as Ms. Reed said, come forth with the R5A. So would you designate that as a special use permit? Is that possible?
Well, special use permits deal with the use itself. So the use in any circumstance in R5A is residential. R5A does not allow for non-residential use. So special use permit would not necessarily allow an R5A. It would really be more a matter of
Rezoning.
rezoning. Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Okay. Well, okay, that answers because once if we move forward with this, it could, even though we don't have many R5As coded in our zoning map, could affect any part of the city if in fact, is it the suburban category that would fall under, the suburban housing subset?
She came in at 4:42. Yeah.
Can somebody answer that? So anywhere that's suburban neighborhood, they could potentially request a rezoning under this R5.
So I think you're speaking, are you speaking of future land use, Councilwoman?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so Lee and I haven't had that distinct discussion yet as to what future land use it will fall in, but it will probably, because of the density allows, it will probably be the suburban 2 classification within the future land use map.
Okay, so that's concerning, especially when I look at the size of that lot. If we were doing this, I would hope that we would do it on a smaller scale. It goes up to 20 acres. So now I imagine 200 of these houses potentially in the area. That seems like a lot. If we move forward, I would hope we would look at a smaller footprint. I think it's proposed to go from, is it 5 acres or is it 2? It drops down to 2 acres. Can you go back?
Yes, ma'am. The proposal is to allow a property to apply for rezoning to R5A if it is a minimum of 2 acres in size or a maximum of 20 acres in size.
Or it could be on small acres, pots throughout the city potentially, and can go as large as 20 acres. I just would hope we would at least, if we move forward, drop that 20 down to something significantly less.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rao. We're gonna go with Councilman Reeves and then Councilmember Khalid.
And me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then Councilwoman Gilliard.
Yes, I just want to say that this is this R5A designation is a good designation per where they already exist. I do share the sentiments with my colleagues that do not desire this, or their constituents that do not desire this. However, there is a market for this in other areas, and it addresses housing needs, particularly for seniors. And so you can have veteran communities. You can just do a lot with these, with this particular zoning. And it's just simply on the books to allow for different housing options to be offered. And I think that we should move forward. And I like the concept. And there's some constituents over here that like the concept as well. And hey, listen, it's with building materials high, and they're looking at different ways to construct homes. And so I think this is the future's here, and this is the future of housing, part of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Khalid.
Yes. Would I be allowed to share my screen?
Yes. You can share your face.
No, my screen.
Go ahead, Mr. Khalid. You want to say something?
Yes, I was here. You know what? I will just put this in the chat.
Yeah, we can't see you. Are you in front of the microphone? Camera?
I am. I was actually trying to share my screen, not necessarily my face, but that's fine. I'm also just going to put this in the YouTube chat so that the constituents watching can see it as well. I'm looking at the future land use map, so I'm a little concerned because we talked, Ms. Reed, if you could just talk about you said that it would be likely that the R5A classification would be limited to subdivision 2?
Yes, I was thinking more so of the density that it will propose, as the Councilwoman Rao identified. It will be a very high density for such a small area. The density will be more increased because of the availability of the size of the actual home. It allows for more. So the density will be larger for that particular area. But we haven't gone into much depth of a discussion, Lee and myself, to determine what the actual location would be for the future land use. But if I could just speak on that for that quick thought, it would be more likely the suburban 2.
All right. So that concerns me because the majority of suburban 2, according to this future land use map that I'm pulling up, I'm not sure if it's the correct one or not, but pretty much all the suburban 2 neighborhoods are south of Highway 29. And I think that if we're going to be equitable, then these houses should be allowed everywhere. I don't want to see all of these houses crowded along districts 5, 6, and 7 because they happen to be zoned suburban 2. So if we're not sure, then I just think that we might need to hold this and just have more discussion.
So if I may add to that, just to kind of explain to you how the future land use map works for the public as well as for council. The council areas between 1 and 4 are primarily going to have a lower densities because that has been how they've chosen to facilitate their land. And of course, you're going to see that the 5 through 7 is going to have larger because of the commercial area and such around it. So with that being said, it's not necessarily purposely putting in one side of the city versus the other. It's just that density has been outlined historically for the city, even before the city's time, to have a higher density in the lower portions of the city.
And while I understand that, and whether it's with all due respect, whether it's purposeful or not, the net effect is that all of these smaller, cheaper homes will be on the south side of the city. And I think that when we're thinking about density, that's just I'll just leave it there. That's just
I understand. I appreciate that, Councilman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Khalid. Ms. Gilliard?
Yes, I would appreciate it very much if you would go back over R5, especially since I heard that District 4 has R5 zoning. So could you go back over that, please?
Yes, ma'am. So the proposed zoning text amendment is to take what is existing as the R5A residential district, which currently allows single-family homes on 4,000 square foot lots, minimum lot size, and to modify that to be more of a cottage home, tiny home district that emphasizes open space design approaches for neighborhoods and that allows homes as small as 400 square feet. A 400 square foot home does qualify as a tiny home under the state's definition, which is from 400 square feet down to maybe 200 or 250 square feet. So it would only allow the largest or high end, if you will, of the tiny home size. It would also, of course, allow larger homes, cottages or small homes to be constructed. And there's a lot of additional standards that are in the, I believe, documentation you have that describe pocket neighborhood clusters and how design of a neighborhood must include open space and such small homes clustered around open space.
So I did not know this, and I'm going back to what Mrs. Reed just said, and that was that districts 1 and 4 are the lower density areas. And I'm going to also repeat what Council Willis said. District 4 citizens are not interested in tiny homes. So I want to know how District 4 can change the R5 designation, because that's not going to work.
So I think it's the case.
We're talking about people that are upset because they purchased 50 acres and somebody wants to even put a subdivision behind their 50 acres, which is nowhere near a tiny home. That is an issue. And just because there's a lot of undeveloped land doesn't mean that that's where you go and just drop it. But out of all of this, what is really clear to me is that there is no overall strategy for the city that says we have come together and in area A, we're going to have this strategically, in B strategically, and C strategically. So what we end up doing is saying, well, you know, in this individual area, and I'm doing it right now for lack of anything else better to do strategically, that that they don't want it. So there's no strategy for any of this. We're just doing it here, doing it there, and doing it everywhere. And so District 4, this is definitely, they're fighting and trying to hold on to AG1 with the largest lots they can possibly get. And so I don't know how I missed this, but I really did miss this. So I want to know what I can do. What solution is there for District 4, Mrs. Reed?
Yes, ma'am. So the parcel that has the R5A that's within District 4 was recently rezoned, I believe back in 2018. But of course, please know that the R5A information that we're talking about now were not in place in 2018. So when that decision was made in 2018, you were seeing a very much similar standard development that you would see today in the city of South Fulton for that particular parcel. However, this amendment would change that opportunity to where at a minimum, of course, it can go down as low as 400 square feet for the homes instead of what the original. Okay. So with that said, the only opportunity you would have there, of course, I would defer to the city attorney, but if you wish to have for this zoning text amendment to go through and allow it to be an opportunity for the city to change their text, you would then want to see if you could partner with that property owner in a city initiated rezoning to change the zoning from that. However, there could be an opportunity where the property may want to come in and still develop in its original standards that were placed in 2018 that did not allow for homes this size or this destination that you're hearing now.
So I don't understand why the text amendment cannot say something to the effect of R5A is no longer in District 4.
I think the reason for that, if I could clarify, by procedural right, any property owner in the city has the right to apply for rezoning to any zoning category. That's a part of the bundle of rights of the property owner. It is the opportunity to seek a decision by the city council.
Right.
So now the comprehensive plan, of course, and many other factors guide where rezonings should and should not be, supported, simply put. But it becomes, I think, a bit more challenging when you look to take away a property owner's right to at least apply if they so desire.
Well, what I'm not trying to do is take it away. What I'm saying is that if any property owner wants to come before the city with a particular type of zoning that doesn't exist in that area, they request a zoning change. So you have the right to do that. It's just that it's not carved in stone that R5A is a part of a district that is trying to maintain its character and not have that. It doesn't make sense.
And I believe, and again, I could be corrected, I'm not directly involved with the comprehensive plan, but I believe that the comprehensive plan future land use map, thinking of District 4 and the rural, low density nature of the majority of it, I believe it would discourage an R5A type development in at least the majority of District 4, but I may be stepping out on a limb too far there.
But you're really not. It is the section that's below 92 that is really preserved. On the other side of 92, that's where, and this is really what I'm really fighting, that's where suburban 1 and 2 exists, particularly 2, where you can go up to 8 per acre. Okay. And so that's one thing. The other thing is that's the only place that 5A can be. And the problem with that is that there's an infrastructure issue. We cannot continue to just pack it in and there not occur anything with infrastructure. That's not going to work. And so since there is the land and developers tell me, hey, South Fulton's the only one that's got land. The developers are coming and it's the only land that exists and they're going to want to try and do whatever, get whatever they want. And so if we are not mindful of it, we probably need to stop for a moment and figure out what we're going to do, or we're just going to have cars bumping into each other. So that's a real big concern over on the other side of 92. That's where this is going to be allowed, and it really doesn't make sense. Even though there's density over there, we just don't need to keep packing and packing and packing. So I don't want to know what to do, but I want that changed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gilliard. Let me now entertain Councilman Mr. Baker.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Baker, go ahead.
I have a question regarding the R5A and its effect on, or actually more so, what is the zoning that would allow container homes? And is that something totally different from this R5A?
Currently, the code does not specify to allow for container homes in the city. It is something that we have a certain building material restrictions in the city when it comes to residential structures. And that was one of the materials identified for that particular use is not a allowable use for that particular material.
So they're not allowed in the city at all?
Correct. In your December 2020 update, that was one of the items that was included inside of that revision.
Okay. So I've had a lot of pushback regarding property value, of course, as well as what these tiny homes would look like 15 years later. And we have to be really, really careful that we're not building small communities that are like projects. If we're looking for affordable housing, I think we should probably entertain that approach. And if that is the case, or is that the case, that's why this is up for consideration. Can someone answer that?
So yes, sir. So the items before you is what we've either heard from you directly as council or something that staff has identified a need. So the calendar before you now is identifying where we're scheduling to move forward with it. So if we're hearing that council wishes for us to move forward with all of these items with the exception of 1 or 2 or whatever it may be, then we'll continue to move forward and push these items through the legislative process. If we then move it forward to go to the planning commission, fully identifying the list that we have given to you, and then you hear it in December 14th and tell us, okay, in first read, we've heard 12 items out of the 12. We want to only allow for 8 or 10, whatever the number may be. Then staff will then move forward with those particular items. So we're introducing to you what we've heard to let you know what we're working on so that you're aware where we are. Because I know there's a lot of items on this list that we had not communicated with you all as to where we are. So this particular presentation was for the sake of giving you the opportunity to learn that staff is in fact working on items that you have given us the request to move forward.
So is this something that we ultimately would be making taking a vote on, Mr. Mayor, at our 8 o'clock meeting?
And am I correct in saying that, Ms. Reed? It does come back on the 8 o'clock meeting, doesn't it?
It does not. This was more of a presentation of information. The votes take place on December 21st, as Councilman Morales is noting. That's when you actually take the vote. However, it could be as simple as I don't know if the collective body is saying they're comfortable with the full list or not, but maybe that's something you can share with the city managers to give us direction on how to move it forward. And then from there, we'll receive our guidance from her to tell us how what items need to continue, what not to continue.
I didn't remember. I wanted to make sure. Dr.
Yes,
Baker,
sir.
go ahead.
Well, no, that was my question, because if there's time to continue to receive, like in real time, we're receiving an outpour from the community, just like as we're speaking, and I just didn't want to make a decision in haste. Right. And if we had to, at the 8 o'clock meeting, I was going to see if this is something that we could probably have, a little bit more time. But if it's any time outside of 8 o'clock, I guess we could converse further on it. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Ms. Khalid, I'm going to hold 1 minute because I have not given Councilwoman Gumbs an opportunity to speak. So Councilwoman Gumbs, go right ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mayor. One of the things that I was really concerned about is the limited community engagement in regards to this. So is there a way, since we're not voting on this, and that we can get some engagement from the community? I know we're receiving an abundance of emails for and support, and then we have some that's opposed. But is there a way that you all from community planning and development can host town halls in regards to what we are doing with the zoning ordinance, the change that is being proposed to the residents?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Last night we had our CZIM meeting, and we went over each of these items during that discussion. And residents were able to weigh in and give their thoughts on that. If you're asking for an additional one outside of the CZIM, of course, by any request, we can ensure that that take place as well.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. I don't know how many people attended the CZIM meeting last night, or if the feedback, or even if it's a survey that can go out citywide that comes from the city's office versus, we as council members can also share that information. But we do have an abundance of residents that are saying, no, they don't want it. And then we have some that are in support, and mostly of them are coming out of District 5. So I'm just trying to make sure that we holistically have an approach to address this concern.
Okay. Mr. Clee, go right ahead. It's your second go round. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I did want to just offer another suggestion, and I would like to say, like, we're heading into Thanksgiving, and then our December 21st meeting is 4 days before Christmas. So if we need more time to think about this one particular issue, I'm not trying to hold up all the other text amendments. I think we may need more time than this holiday season. That's the first point. And the second point is, I think what I hear is concern about where, because developers will be able to make rezoning applications potentially anywhere. What I hear is a desire of this council to just have more control over where these tiny home communities might exist. So what I would like to propose is, if we created a third subdivision classification, like subdivision 3, where only tiny homes, and maybe if people are interested in container homes, like these sorts of new and alternative housing, which are, they are trendy right now, but they are definitely not traditional. But if we could have a subdivision 3 classification and then look holistically at the map of the city to see where we would want these communities, so that we just have more control over where they go, versus, if we don't do that, then once we approve it and the application process is open, then anybody who applies for this rezoning will be governed under whatever rules we have in place right now. And if we decide, oh, we want to make some changes, we won't be able to retroactively change these applications that are already in the pipeline. So that would just be my suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. I'm going to acknowledge Mr. Reeves, and then I'll go after Mr. Reeves, and we'll go on to the next topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. I just want to say that I agree with getting more of a survey, but this is something that I have been discussing since last November for a whole year. And the community affected by this one particular development that is to come as all signed off on it. And so we had community engagement and community involvement before we even started the process, bringing it to the city. So I'm all for it. Let's go and get more. I think December 21st is plenty of time to engage. I don't think that we need to go past there. And so let's just progress forward and move along and get engagement and get buy-in. And so there's always going to be people for or against. And currently it only exists in districts 4, 5, and 7 as to what I heard Director Reed say and state and quote on record. So and it's already existing on the books. It's just allowing for smaller homes, but you still have a 4,000 square foot lot. So I think that allows for, because it is a market for it, and people are wanting to have those options. So thank you for the time.
So let me just say one thing in closing. Number one is South Fulton, the city of South Fulton is a whole community. And I think that each one of us, one of y'all put your hand on the Bible and said that you were for the city of South Fulton. But, and I got Ms. Gilliard, I'm going to say something, and that is you're perfectly correct, because it would come over to your district because people have property rights. And once you can't take their property rights away from them. Right. That's an issue. Here's what I find to be very interesting. We just approved and expand on notification to 1 mile. You remember that? So that 1 mile radius could actually go spill over to another district where people would have a say-so. We need to think about that before we start on this my district stuff. Now, the other thing I want to say to you is, Ms. Reed, kind of walk me through, if you will, how did we get here? Where was the community engagement? Where was the staff engagement? If you kind of briefly walk me through that, because I'm having big problems with that right now.
So particular items, they're all different.
I'm just talking about this item, tiny homes.
So that portion I would need to defer to Mr. Thomas, because he was initially a part of that conversation with the start. I came in once the project was identified.
My first problem right there, Mr. Thomas is not a plan. So I don't know what I'm gonna talk to him about. All right. So what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to get you to see is that the things that my colleagues are talking about now, the community engagement, the process, had all of that been done, then we would have had less conversation today. All right. That's what Ms. Gilliard mean when I didn't know anything about it. So I'm just wondering, do we just come here at this time and put an issue on the table and think we're going to resolve it in one meeting? I think that's not fair, not to the constituents and not fair to the rest of us the rest of you guys on the council. So I'm appalled. I can't see us doing anything right now, Mr. Reeves, except holding this, like Mr. Khalid and others have said, until we can get a grasp on, the facts that surround why we want to do this. So that's my 2 cents in. CZIM, I'm not. You say CZIM, I'm not impressed,
Mr. Chair,
because I have seen CZIM meetings, and I'm not impressed. That does not give me a big range of how people feel. So,
Mr. Chair,
no, let me talk, and I'm gonna finish, Mr. Reed, because I said I was gonna finish, and we was going to the next item. I'm sorry, sir. So, but that's the way I feel. I think we should, and you agree with this, Mr. Reed. I think we should hold it and get some more input so we can make a rational decision as about where we're gonna go, not just for District 5.
no, sir.
But listen to Mr. Reed. I'm talking. I'll let you talk. Not for just District 5, but 4 and 7, whoever it is. All right. Then we make a reasonable decision on this. So that's my 2 cents in. I want to thank y'all for your participation. And Mr. Clerk, would you go to the next item, please?
Yes, sir. Next item is the monthly reports. The first monthly report is the finance report by Rachel Bembry, Interim Finance Director.
Ms. Bembry, come on.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to provide you the financial reports for fiscal year 21 as of September 30th. Please note that although these financials are as of fiscal year end, they do not quite represent the revenues and expenditures, as you'll see in your audit and as the financials are updated. We have many closing entries to make for accruals and other things as we close the fiscal year 21 books. But we'll proceed here with our general fund summary of revenues. And we report for the fiscal year about 111% of our budgeted levels. We do need to bring a final end of year amendment before council to recognize some items and circumstances that have not yet been incorporated into the amended budget. And this will reduce the variances some, but will address some of the fluctuations in these revenue streams. But at this time, we are reporting at about 111% of budgeted levels. Next slide, please. For expenditures, we are reporting about 73% of budgeted levels. This variance is due to a couple of things, including some personnel expenditures that need to be booked for fiscal year 21, as well as some end of year transfers supporting like, for example, the E911 fund and some others that are booked at year end, as well as accrual entries. As we close the books for the fiscal year, we will be, doing payroll accruals and other accruals to this expenditure line items. But at this time, we are reporting at about 73% of budgeted levels in the general fund. Our next slide, please. This slide shows you year-to-date tax revenues. It has not fluctuated much from our prior month's report because it's just not yet time for our tax collections. But you can see the city does have a consistently good collection rate, over 98%. So that's what we want to continue to see as we begin collecting taxes in the new year. Next slide, please. This slide shows you your year-to-date lost or local option sales tax revenues. You'll note for the year we've received almost $28 million in revenues, which is about 14% over prior year collections. Your next slide. This slide is a similar view, but shows you your T-SPLOST, your transportation SPLOST collections, which is a special purpose local option sales tax. And these collections are reporting just under 19 million, which is at about 16% over the prior year's collections. This slide here shows you your general fund summary of expenditures. These are your year-to-date expenditures, and this is the same information, but in a bar chart view. You'll note, as expected, your larger departments are your police, fire, and public works. The next slide. Here we have a budget to actual financials for all of the city's funds. Again, an end-of-year amendment, an end-of-year budget amendment for fiscal year 21 will address some of the significant variances that you see here. And then the next slide. These last two slides are special reports that are prepared at the request of council. This report shows you the cash balances as of, excuse me, as of fiscal year end September 30th, 2021. And this final slide presents the balance and activity of the confiscated assets funds. You'll note that the balance is about $246,000 with about $107,000 in confiscations and no use of confiscated funds in fiscal year 21. And then I open the floor and welcome your questions.
I have questions. Mr. Mayor, I have questions. Hello?
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Gill, y'all go right ahead. Ms. Gill, y'all go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna, Ms. Bembry, I'm just gonna tell you like what they are. I have a couple of them. I heard you mention the word audit, and I would like to know when the FY21 audit is going to begin and whether or not we still have the same company. And as a part of the year-end September year-to-date report, I would love to see a sheet with the assets, the liability, and the fund balance in that report. And then the final thing is whether or not you have had an opportunity to go over council salaries for the month of October and to make sure that whatever might have been done maybe incorrectly has been corrected. So those are my questions.
Ms. Bembry? Rachel?
She's muted.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I don't know how that happened. Thank you for your questions, Councilmember Gilliard. I'm happy to address those now. The first one in regards to the audit. We have received the engagement letter from Malden and Jenkins. I do not believe we have returned it executed yet, but at this time, I do anticipate that they will be conducting the audit. And will be in for field work toward the end of the year, or the beginning of the calendar year 2022. And typically they issue financials in roughly March. And so we anticipate a similar schedule. In regards to your question number 2, it is not a problem to present the balance sheet. I'll get your preference on citywide versus general fund, but that's not a problem at all. And then in regards to your final question and on council salaries, we did have an internal staff meeting regarding that this morning. As you are aware, there were the first 2 payrolls in the fiscal year 22 that did have some deduction errors due to an import issue. With the rollover into the new fiscal year, as you are aware, those have already been corrected and returned. And I have no other knowledge of any issues with council salaries. Based on the review that I conducted with payroll this morning, all appears to be in order, and no issues are in the current payroll or anticipated moving forward.
I have just a question. You said that everything has been corrected as of now. Is that what you just said?
That's correct.
Okay, so as of a couple of days ago, it has not for me. My net has decreased 3 times.
Yep.
It hasn't been corrected. Not unless it was corrected yesterday or the day before.
No, ma'am, and we have validated that those are accurate. And I think it would be advisable for us to sit down at a table and review those together, just as we did internally with staff today. We did compile a spreadsheet, and we all reviewed it this morning internally to be sure it was accurately presenting the situation as well as addressing all of the inquiries. And I understand Ms. Aller-Jones is going to be providing you that spreadsheet, and then we'll have an opportunity to get together and review that collectively if that helps explain any of the issues that you may have.
Yeah, and it's just that I know that I wasn't the only one. So I hope it's been done across the board, because the error was made across the board. It wasn't, it wasn't by individual. And so some people might not have even checked theirs, and they really do need to. I know that I at least know that 2 people have.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll leave that alone, and I'll just wait and get that information.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Gilliard. Mr. Reeves, followed by Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliard, for bringing that to my attention. I will go check. Ms. Bembry, as I asked before, I'll just do this on record. Could you certify my audit, please? Could you provide mine certified? Thank you.
Well, I'll get clarification offline at what you're asking for specifically there.
All right. Okay, Dr. Rao, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to clarify, this will be the first year that we'll realize revenue from FIB. Is that correct? I think I saw on one of your slides, maybe 2 slides back, we're about at 2 of the 3.9 million. Is that correct?
FIB, I'm not sure exactly which slide you're referring to. We will get some revenues have started coming in fiscal year 21, like your franchise fees and some of those. We will again see additional revenues in fiscal year 22 in terms of your business license and things of that nature. And then we'll see the revenues for property taxes, for example, and possibly insurance commission, insurance premium taxes in fiscal year 23. So there's actually going to be a fairly staggered revenue streams coming on board.
If Mr. Adams can scroll up one screen, I think it was the one before questions, or it might have been the one before. Go back one more.
Let's see.
Thought I saw something in here that said FIB.
Now the revenue slide references FID, which I understand is an intergovernmental revenue we have. That's the only thing I can think of.
So you're referencing in that slide. It was so Fulton Industrial Boulevard, Fulton Industrial District. I guess we're using the terms interchangeably. It was on the very first slide. I think I saw it was like 3.9, and it showed like 2 million something that had been. Okay.
So yes, ma'am. And I do understand there may be, I know FID and FIB may be used fairly interchangeably, but I cannot say for certain that they represent exactly the same things, because I have to, revisit what the FID, the district actually covers. But the line you are referring to is our intergovernmental revenue line, and it does address the FID, which is with the county, as well as the city of Atlanta's intergovernmental revenue.
Okay.
That's fine.
And as we move forward, I know you talked about that we would do another amendment to capture some revenues. Will that also allow us to, will you be breaking out some of those other areas like the public art fund, the different revenues, so it's very clear how they track back with more detail than we've had in the past?
We certainly can look at the level of detail that's provided in that end of year amendment to break it down to a level that is sufficient for mayor and council. That's certainly not a problem. We will be addressing revenues that increases as well as revenues that decreases, and I would anticipate if I'm the one that prepares it for you, that it would be of the same level of detail as what I have during the fiscal year 22 budget development, as well as the amendment you'll see later this evening, which would definitely identify it at that level.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Willis.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Mayor. Ms. Bembry, it is of concern to me that we had this type of error regarding our council pay and payroll error. And I understand you attribute it to the importing in the new and the rolling over of the new fiscal year. However, what's concerning to me is that there was no peer review or quality control process implemented in order to catch this. And I come from a payroll background, and I've dealt with large payrolls and small payrolls. But in every payroll process that I have been involved in, there has always been some type of quality control peer review process instituted to catch these type of errors. And so my question is, going forward, will that be instituted in our payroll process? Because while I understand you saying that the journal entries have been corrected, and I have not seen the correction, but I'm okay. But I just would hate for any of the other employees who work hard and who are struggling through this pandemic to be impacted in any way due to a payroll internal error.
Yeah. Yes, Councilmember, I definitely understand your concern. I do not believe that the other employees will fall into the same situation. They all did complete their open enrollment documents by the provided deadline, so there shouldn't be any issues with their import file. I believe that was some of the issue with the council files. So while we don't anticipate that, we are looking internally at our processes as well as our systems to ensure that our payroll, is accurate, and that we have those controls in place.
Well, so I would say that I'm going to give a little pushback on us completing things that wasn't timely, because there was a lot of inaccurate information involving what council pay should be. So I won't go into those details because that's personnel related. But whether things were, you felt done timely or not, payroll is straightforward. Deductions are deductions, and I just would like, if possible, without disparaging anyone, I just would like, if possible, that you as a CFO or the new CFO comes in, institute a peer review process in our payroll process so that errors can be caught and no one pay could be impacted. This is involving this incident this time, but it doesn't matter what incident it is. No one pay should be impacted if we have a good quality peer review process in place. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Willis, if you don't mind, I just wanted to address that too. We will be following up, and as you mentioned, we will make sure that these type of errors, and I want to stress unintentional errors, are addressed going forward. I did want to make sure, payroll falls under our HR department now, so we will be working with that director, along with, of course, the finance director to follow up. And then I will be sure to send an email to you and Councilmember Gilliard. Specifically, you had asked some questions, and I'll be sure to get that out tonight. It was just these back-to-back meetings today. I did not get a chance to forward that information to you after the staff and I had a meeting late this morning.
I appreciate your due diligence and your attention on this, and I do understand it was not intentional. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Yes, the next item is item 5 under monthly reports. City Attorney monthly report. Vincent Hyman, City Attorney.
Mr. Hyman, do you have anything you can indulge in public?
Mayor and Council, I've submitted a written report for if there needs to be further discussion, it can be done in executive session.
Any discussion on his written report that was given to everybody? Hearing none, thank you so much. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Item 6, City Manager monthly report. Tammi Jones, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening, citizens of the City of South Fulton. I do want to start off on the subject of finance. I'm pleased to announce that I have hired Ms. Karen Dixon as our new permanent finance director. Ms. Dixon will start on December the 1st. She is currently the finance director for the City of Norcross, where she's served in that role for the past 14 and a half years. She has over 25 years of management experience and, well, actually 34 years of experience in local government, and specifically 25 years in management of governmental accounting. Ms. Dixon is currently members of several professional organizations such as the Government Finance Officer Association, the Georgia Government Finance Officer Association, the Georgia City County Management Association, and the American Public Power Association. And we look forward to having her join our team. Again, she will join on December the 1st. And one of the first things we will be doing, of course, is continuing to fill some vacancies in the finance department as she comes on board to build her team. And I especially want to thank Ms. Rachel Bembry for her role as our interim finance director. She's done a great job for us over the last several months, and I certainly appreciate her dedicated service in moving the finance department forward. I also want to welcome and introduce you all to Ms. Jasmine Owens. Jasmine is the administrative assistant to the city manager. Jasmine started with us on November the 3rd. She comes with almost 10 years of experience in local government, and I am very happy to have her on our team. And I would ask that you would include Jasmine on your emails to me so that she will assist me in making sure that I follow up on any council request that you may have. At the council's direction, staff, we did seek the assistance of Mr. Dan McRae to draft the intergovernmental agreements for the Downtown Development Authority and also the South Fulton Development Authority. We did provide drafts to you, and I had requested that if you have any feedback, that you provide that to me. I believe it was by Monday, but if you need some additional time, I will be glad to ask that you will let me know by the close of business on tomorrow. And then it is our expectation to try to get that on the agenda for December for council's consideration. But if you need me to send out the draft again to you, I will be glad to do that. And I know that there were some questions of Mr. McRae. He is assisting me in getting those questions answered. And as soon as he follows back with me, I will forward those to all council members. With the number of cases for COVID decreasing, now with the boosters out, and now COVID vaccines for children, it is my expectation to the council that we look at returning in person in January. During this phase, we will continue to look at meeting logistics to ensure that we make a safe return. But I would, like to ask council's consideration for returning to in-person meetings starting January, and we will continue, over the next couple months to look at the science and hear from science and look at the numbers. But we are hoping and praying that we are able to return in person in January. Due to the upcoming holidays, I did want to remind the public, just like tonight, next month, Tuesday, December the 14th, we will have one council meeting date, but we will hold 3 meetings on December the 14th. The work session will start at 4 p.m. The zoning hearing meeting will start at 6 p.m. and the regular council meeting will begin at 8 p.m. Again, that's going to be on Tuesday, December the 14th, work session 4 p.m., zoning hearing meeting 6 p.m., and our regular meeting at 8 p.m. And then also, I do want to remind the public that on Thursday, November the 11th, the city will be closed in observance of Veterans Day, and we want to recognize all of our veterans in the city of South Fulton. And then also, we will be closed on November the 24th and 25th for the Thanksgiving holiday. And of course, normal business will resume on Monday, November the 29th. And of course, since this is our that will be our last meeting, I want to, of course, wish our staff and the council and the mayor and the public a joyful and safe Thanksgiving holiday. So with that, Mayor, I will be glad to take any questions that any of the council members or you may have.
Any questions of the city manager? I don't see any. Thank you.
Well, I was trying to get my hand up. I was gonna say, well, seeming that we watched the Braves World Series home games and the subsequent parade, we come back in December?
Well, I just
in-person meetings.
With us having one meeting, I wanted us to have a chance to get all the logistics together, Councilmember Reeves. So if you will, give us this month and also the month of December, so we can have everything logistically taken care of at the location. When we were trying to go back, a few months ago, and then of course the variant came, we were looking at the South Fulton Art Center, and that would be the location. But of course, we do have some logistical things that we need to work out at that specific location, if that is going to remain the venue where we will continue to have our city council meetings.
Yes, ma'am. And will those be coming with those little plastic, clear plastic dividers in between persons, just to for safety reasons?
Yeah, those are all the type of things that we need to work on. So yeah, if we need to do that, we will try to make every effort to make everybody safe.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none.
Tim Willis has
Yeah, I had my hand raised.
Ms. Willis, I did not see you until now. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Okay. Just one quick question. Ms. Tyler Jones, can you please forward those IGAs to the entire council again? And I think 4 of us that is working on revisions of the resolutions, and we asked you to ask Mr. McCray to help us with that as well. So I guess those are the questions you're forwarding back to us. We were asking you to hold off until January because we have some I think it's about 4 or 5 appointments that are going to be made in January. So and so that would give the new council an opportunity to make appointments and just go ahead and shore up both of those resolutions along with the IGAs.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't recognize any more hands in the queue nor on the computer. Am I correct?
Thank you.
That is correct.
Okay, next item.
The next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is executive session. However, your next meeting begins at 6 p.m.
Would it be okay if anybody have an executive session item to hold on to after the next meeting? Is that all right with the body?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Properly moved and second. Any discussion? Do I see anyone? You see anyone, Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay, let's vote, please.
Roll call vote to adjourn. Councilmember Rao.
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willis.
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliard. Councilmember Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Khalid. Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
We are adjourned
Yes.
at 5:55 p.m.
Okay, our next meeting is 6 o'clock.
Yes.
All right.